The meeting is also being live streamed and recorded. A few guidelines to help ensure the meeting proceeds smoothly. First of all is regrettably this method of holding a meeting limits our ability to hear public comment. In lieu of public comment, I encourage members of the public to email council members directly. Our email addresses can all be found on the council's website under the About Us section. During the meeting, everyone other than the person speaking should put their microphone on mute. Also, please direct all discussion and requests to speak through me. I will try and my best to keep track of waved or hands in the air to try and make sure we keep things moving along and give everyone a chance to speak. Because conversations among several people by electronic means can be cumbersome, we should limit our discussions to the business items and issues directly related to the business items. I do ask that you each state your name when you're speaking so that members of the public know who is making a motion and who is seconding, who is talking, and also so Jenna can record the information. Because we are conducting the meeting electronically, all votes will be taken by roll call. When we do so, Jenna will call the roll in alphabetical order. The other council members and the public must also be able to hear your votes. As we've known, sometimes there's been issues with this, so feel free if there's any audio issues to make sure that you note your I or nay in the comment section if our audio fails us. During the course of the meeting, if you leave the location from which you're participating, please inform me of your absence so I can ensure a quorum exists to continue during the meeting. Are there any questions before we proceed? If not, Jenna, could you please take a roll so that we can ensure we have a quorum?
Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
I'm here.
Cummings.
Here.
Ferguson.
Here.
Fredson.
Here.
Gonzalez.
Here.
Sterner.
Here.
Zurin.
Present.
And Barber.
Here. With that, I'll call to order the meeting of the Metropolitan Council Transportation Committee for Monday, June 8th. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Did anyone have any changes or additions? Linnea, did you have an addition you'd like to make to the agenda?
Chair, no, I think it's just fine. Can you hear me okay? I think it's just fine for us to ask questions regarding that topic during General Coista's.
Okay, very good. Just
comment time. Yep.
Very good. Just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
No problem. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Fredson here, so moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Cummings second.
Seconded by Cummings, I think. With that, Jenna, could you call the roll?
Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zurin.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. All right, our next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the April 27th, 2020 Transportation Committee. Did anyone have any changes or additions to the minutes? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Zurin.
Chambliss, second.
The motion is second. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zurin.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. And the minutes are approved. Next, we have the TAC report. We have David Finley here with us.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. David Fenley, Chair of the Transportation Accessibility Advisory Committee. A couple of quick updates. Our committee was on hiatus April and May. We met for the first time since March on Wednesday. We talked about some things that I will update you on right now. The first of which is, as you could probably guess, COVID-19 has hit the disability community relatively hard, given that it's an at-risk population, and some physical distancing is not easy when you're dealing with home healthcare workers. We are glad to hear, though, that the decrease in demand on Metro Mobility has allowed them to adapt and utilize their capacity to serve other needs that have arisen because of COVID. So that is fantastic. I'm happy to share more details with that if you want. I'm also pleased to hear that the Met Council is focusing on digital accessibility and has been working with TAC members in the redesign of its Metro Transit website. And also one last thing, the suspension of service that happened last week because of the horrible murder of George Floyd and the protests that ensued did leave some folks stranded at home without the ability to have their home healthcare workers. But as far as I know, everything worked out just fine, and people understood that this was necessary. And that is all that I have for you all today.
Thank you, David. Did anyone have any questions? Okay, if not, then we will move on to manager reports. We have Metropolitan Transportation Services Director Thompson.
Madam Chair and members, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
A couple updates. Since we did not meet in May, I thought I'd update you on the regional solicitation. That applications for that were due on May 15th, and a summary of the applications we received. We received 132 applications, which is just close to what we did in 2018. And if you recall, we did extend the deadline due to impacts of COVID. And so I think that it worked out well. It showed that most of our local agencies were still able to submit applications. We received applications from 41 different applicants, which is very similar to previous cycles. The applications broke down to 72 in the roadway category, 50 in the bike ped and safe route to school category, and 19 in transit. Bike and trails was the largest single category with 38 individual applications. So a strong demand there. The requests for federal funding from the application totaled $466 million with a local match commitment of $344 million. So between those two, over $800 million in potential projects. The total available funds from the federal allocation is only $180 million federal. So roughly like a third of the projects may be able to receive federal funding in this cycle. So the demand, like previous cycles, far exceeds the amount of funding that's available. The upcoming schedule is that scoring committees will begin to meet on June 25th with final score or initial scores released to the public and applicants on August 20th this summer. And then by the end of the year, TAB will approve the recommended projects that would then go to council for concurrence. In terms of an operations update, all MTS transit operations, which includes some contracted fixed route, Transit Link, and Metro Mobility, resume back to their service types and levels that existed for COVID. So they're kind of back to that COVID type setup right now. Healthcare worker trips continue to be really strong, being used on Metro Mobility. We expanded essential worker trips when the service was shut down and saw a big surge in healthcare worker trips. And even as the transit service resumed last Wednesday, it looks like we've kept several of those healthcare workers traveling on a Metro Mobility. So we'll continue to provide that service. We are continuing also to provide the food shelf delivery service, but we will be transitioning that from Metro Mobility's contracts providing the food shelf delivery to Transit Link. And we need to do this because we're expecting Metro Mobility trips to increase, particularly as the adult daycare and the day training habilitation centers have now been given some approval to partially reopen. And that's a decent number of trips that need to be made on Metro Mobility. So our demand is going to go up. But we should be able with Transit Link to continue the food delivery for the foreseeable future. In terms of operational setup for their contractors, this morning they all began doing temperature checks for all employees that arrive on their work site, including drivers, mechanics, and dispatchers and administrative staff. And that process seems to be going well. There's a combination of being provided by the contractors, or if they didn't have that ability, we are hiring temporary workers to provide that service at the work site. We continue to provide COVID testing to all the contractors, and as they are transit essential workers, and they are doing the testing at the drive-in test sites. And lastly, our contractors continue to report good news in terms of their employees. Their staffing levels are holding strong. They have very few employees out at this point due to COVID or COVID-related issues. And so they are able to meet all our service demands, even with the changes for food delivery and essential worker service. With that, Madam Chair, that concludes my report, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Director Thompson? Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm curious, Nick, if you could discern any changes. It sounds like the volume and so forth of the solicitation was about the same. Could you discern any changes in the type of application or the requests based on the changes that were made over this year going into solicitation? Or is it too early to tell before you sort of review the applications?
Madam Chair, Council Member, a couple of things that did stand out. The bike category was strong in the past one, so I think that was normal. We did increase the roadway category to $10 million for expansion, and so I think we got several more applications in that category. And then transit was strong, and we also didn't receive the BRT application because Metro Transit will be submitting that recommendation later this fall. So we saw a change in the type of applications in transit, but again, pretty strong level of applications there across the region for Metro Transit and the suburban providers. So those are just a few things that stood out, but I think it wasn't that different from last cycle.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson.
Thanks, Chair. Could you share a little bit about, have we continued to do food shelf delivery? And when you mentioned grocery, did that include food shelf delivery as well?
Madam Chair, Council Member, it is mostly food shelf delivery. If for some reason the grocery delivery just has not had any demand, we're probably only making 4 to 5 grocery trips a day versus up to 300 or 400 unique food shelf deliveries. So that's been a much better use of our services for food shelf. So, and that's been really stable. We know that the food shelves have been well supplied. They seem to have been able to get their volunteers in place. And so we have had pretty stable since we started that service, 300 to 400 trips per day. We only provide it on weekdays. I think that's when most of the food shelves are open. And so we're seeing good consistent use there.
Is it possible to get just a quick report, nothing fancy, just on the number of deliveries we've done from food shelves and maybe the amount of people served or supported? I think that's a really great case study for us to really look at. I also am curious, when we first started this, there was some talk about the efficiencies of delivery versus taking people to trips, and I'm curious if there's feedback from participants if they've appreciated the difference as well.
Madam Chair, Council Member, yes, we are tracking our deliveries on a daily basis. I would caution there's one part that we don't, we count our tracking on delivery to a destination, and some of our deliveries are going to senior care centers, and we know that one delivery is often serving multiple people at that delivery, and we don't have the ability to have that type of information. But I think I have we can put together some good results on where we're delivering, amount of it, and how it's changed over time. And then some feedback we've received about what works and doesn't work for grocery delivery and other types of services that we've kind of adjusted over time as we get feedback from our customers. I'd be happy to produce that for the committee.
I appreciate that information, and I think it's also really just a great learning opportunity. I did hear from some of our communities who were excited about the grocery delivery is that for many seniors, they don't have access or use computers in the same way to order from the grocery stores who do online ordering. So that was something I was trying to see if we could provide help or guidance around, but there were complications in us looking like we were endorsing specific businesses to explain how to do that. So I just think that's something for us to explore further in the horrible outcome that this continues or happens again.
Thank you. And I will update Madam Chair and Council Member, one thing that we heard early on is that have EBT or food stamps, different programs were not able to order online. They had to order in, go to a grocery store. And I'm glad that the state has, since this COVID started in the last 2 weeks, have reached agreement for using those cards to allow for online grocery orders. And that, right now, that's only with 2 grocers in the metro area, but they're expanding it, I think, to a couple more this summer. And that was one of the big barriers to using that service. I think not just for Metro Mobility, but for any customers, but anybody who purchased their groceries in that way. So that's one of the lessons we learned, I think, that has been overcome since the start of this just 2 months ago.
Deb, you're on
I
mute.
apologize. We don't, Wes is not able to be here today. So today we have Leslie Kinderis, who's Chief of Staff at Metro Transit. So Leslie.
Good afternoon, Chair Barber and committee members. As Councilmember Barber mentioned, General Manager Koistra is out of the office this week, so I'll provide a brief update on his behalf. And certainly if there are any questions I'm unable to answer today, we'll make sure to follow up with you. First, I wanted to just start with a brief update on development since last Wednesday's Committee of the Whole meeting. You likely recall that at last Wednesday's Committee of the Whole, the General Manager provided a pretty thorough report of Metro Transit's service suspension and Metro Transit's contributions to the coordinated state response to the situation in Minneapolis and St. Paul. By last Thursday morning, we had restored all Metro Transit service back to our COVID service levels. Bus service and North Star were restored last Wednesday, as was shared with you during the Committee of the Whole meeting. And as planned, we were able to restart light rail service on Thursday morning. I'll just note that restoring light rail service first required a very careful inspection of our rail infrastructure by rail system staff and others, especially given how close to fires different segments of both the blue and green lines were. And even though we had fully restored service on Thursday, that day, the Department of Public Safety directed us to stop service at 10 p.m. to coincide with the curfew. So that did affect some bus service that day. In all, between May 29th and June 7th, Metro Transit completed 224 assignments for support buses at the direction of the multi-agency command structure. And I'll just say generally through the past couple of weeks, our rail, bus, police, and engineering and facilities departments have all been working very closely together to address the turmoil in Minneapolis and St. Paul, as well as the efforts to emerge from that. And certainly our engineering and facilities department continues to repair damage. I'll share with this committee what Engineering and Facilities Director Marilyn Porter has shared with others, that community cleanup efforts, especially in the Lake Street area and University area, certainly made facility staff job easier. A lot of volunteers came out, and that meant in a lot of cases, broken glass and other debris had been removed, and we're certainly very thankful of all of those community-led efforts. Looking ahead to this week, I wanted to highlight for the committee that Metro Transit's quarterly service changes go into effect this Saturday, June 13th. This quarter's changes are very minor adjustments. For the most part, we're continuing our reduced service schedule that was instituted back in March in response to the COVID pandemic. With the changes that go into effect this Saturday, we will be at roughly 65% of the service levels we were offering at the beginning of the year. So with the June 13th adjustments, most local bus routes will continue to be on Saturday schedules. However, some routes will see additional service added Monday through Friday. On all days of the week, mini bus trips after 11 p.m. and before 4:30 a.m. will be restored. And light rail service, though, will continue to operate between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. daily. Finally, I just wanted to mention that we continue our ongoing efforts to adjust and refine our COVID responses based on the latest available public health guidance. Back on May 21st, several of us here at Metro Transit met with representatives from the Minnesota Department of Health and Minneapolis Health Department. And the purpose of that meeting was really to discuss strategies to continue to reduce COVID risks for operators and riders. We definitely recognize that here at Metro Transit, we are not public health experts. So it was a really valuable opportunity for us to have a dialogue with people who are experts and to hear their perspectives on what we're doing and what we might consider doing moving forward, especially as the governor continues to turn the dial and we anticipate seeing more riders return to our system. So the meeting was really productive. They provided us with contact information for several people we can work with moving forward to continue to get technical assistance and assistance in how we communicate with the communities as well. So with that, Chair Barber, I'm done with the report, and I certainly welcome any questions people may have.
Thank you. Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson.
Chair, I am trying to adjust my speaking situation so that hopefully you can hear me without me freezing. How's it sounding?
I can hear you now.
Okay, great. I would like to ask that this is not a question for response, but for the committee and for chair. I think it's really important that we're leading right now at this time.
Linnea?
Did I freeze again?
Yeah, I think I missed part of that. I'm sorry.
Now, is this better?
Yeah.
No?
That works.
It works?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So, I think it's really important right now that we are taking the time to lead at all levels throughout our organization, including at the committee level. I would like to request time at our next meeting to discuss as a committee our actions in response to the call from the community for us to take decisive steps to end racial injustice, recognizing that inequity impacts has also been outcomes connected to outcomes related to COVID-19, and specifically as a result of the murder of George Floyd. So I just think it's really important for us to be able to act with fidelity and urgency in response to this call for action. So I'd like to ask that at our next meeting, we have some time set on the agenda for us to discuss what we can do at our committee level and within the things that we are stewards for in alignment with the commitment to the public and the state statute as it outlines our responsibilities for our role as council and committee members, including members of TAB and TAC.
I couldn't agree more. I don't know what all we have on our next agenda, so we'll figure. I could see where this could carry off through several agendas, quite frankly. So we make sure that we have an ongoing discussion. So I'm perfectly good with that. We also have had some discussions definitely at TAB this year. They were very, as a group, very focused more on equity, and I fully expect that we'll have more of those discussions at TAB as well. Leslie, did you want to add anything?
Chair Barber, Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson, and other committee members. No, I would just agree with what Chair Barber just said. At Metro Transit, we would really welcome the opportunity to come and both share some of what we're working on, but I would say especially listen to the committee and where the committee would like to engage and how we can be supportive of that.
I have to apologize. Due to some of my technical difficulty issues on my end, I didn't hear what you had shared as far as a response to if we can have time on our next agenda. That was all.
All right. So what I said was that I think that's a great idea, but I don't know that we want to just limit it to the next agenda. I think because I'm not sure what all we have on the next agenda. I don't want to make sure we have adequate time. I expect it'll go out across several agendas, in fact. And then also I was commenting that TAB this year really decided to focus more on equity. And so I fully expect those conversations to take place at TAB as well. We haven't had a TAB meeting since all of the activities and the murder of Mr. Floyd. And so I think that we haven't necessarily had that conversation with that group yet, but we will.
So just to be clear, you said okay for the next one and others.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I said we'll just have to phase it out. I want to make sure that that we get enough conversation in, and I don't want to try and bucket into too small of a time period so we can have good discussion. Councilmember Fredson.
Thanks, Jerry. I just wanted to add, I sent a email to the chair this morning just saying, look, I think some of these decisions that the city of Minneapolis is making that are in partnership with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, I feel like those could potentially be a baseline for some immediate action that the Met Council takes. And I don't know to what extent, what policies exist and where they exist. And if they're all within the use of force policy, then maybe that's something that we would take a hard look at right out of the gate. But they're just some very clear action steps that the Department of Human Rights and Minneapolis are taking together that the governor and lieutenant governor have already, blessed. And I would hope that we would be able to take some significant action steps quickly.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the chair's statement today, but there's been a lot of conversations going on already. And we do want to take a good solid look at all our policies and practices, especially around policing. And I know that Chief is fully, Chief Rizzo is fully supportive of us doing that. He said he's been in the job a year too, so it's also an opportunity for him to work with us to try and come up with the best solutions so we can be best stewards in our communities. Leslie, did you have anything to add to that one?
Chair Barber, Councilmember Fredson, I was also going to reference the chair's statement today, and certainly Chief Rizzo is very welcoming of that discussion. So thank you for the question.
Councilmember Fredson, you have another
just a
question?
Quick follow-up. I just wanted to say I appreciated that statement, and thank you to the chair and for, to all of those who had a hand in getting it out.
Thanks. Additional questions for Metro Transit? Councilmember Ferguson.
Just, I guess just as we're having this conversation, if we could, we had set aside $500,000, I believe, for community engagement. I just wanted to make sure, or have us think about making sure that maybe we should be focusing that money on community engagement with respect to our police force and thinking about how we do that differently. I think that was originally what I had thought about, and then I think there was sort of questions whether or not we'd use that budget for promoting transit lines or other types of community engagement. But just given what's going on, it might make a lot of sense for us to refocus that money back on helping our police department be engaged with the community and think differently about that. And then the second thing I just think from a big picture conversations we should have is just how is as a council, how do we oversee our police department? So right now, obviously that rolls into West, but if we ever had a problem, all of us would be responsible or held responsible by the community for the actions of that police department. And so just, I think from a governance perspective, I think it's when that was originally set up, we probably had a handful of officers working in the police department, and just whether or not that is the right governance structure. I mean, we don't get a lot of reports from the police department at this committee or at council. And so, it's a good question for all council members. Do you feel you know everything you need to know about the police department, that if there was ever a problem that you could answer the community, that you've done everything that you could have done to prevent a problem like what happened in Minneapolis? I would say personally, no, I don't know enough at this point that I would say that I've done enough. And so I think that's just on that list of conversations we should have. I just think we should have that as one of those conversation points and be thinking about that constructively.
Okay, so for the first one, for the community engagement, I will connect with the Deputy Regional Administrator and maybe have that as something we can talk about at one of our committees of the whole or something like that, because I think that's a good discussion for the whole council to see where we want to move those dollars with the various things going on. Some of the things around the reporting structure for the police department is defined in statute. And so that's something that we'd have to look at and see. And I don't know the history of why the legislature set it up that way, but they did. And so we'll take a look and I'll circle back to you with some more information. Council member, did you have a follow-up at all?
No, that's it.
Okay. Council member Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Just want to agree with Councilmember Ferguson profusely, and I think that I'll do research myself on the statute connections as well. I just think we, not only with the situation with racial injustice that has been finally getting attention, but also with COVID, we're finding so many things about how we were set up that have prevented us from really being able to operate in effective and always efficient manners. And so I think it's really time for us to take a look at those things, question them, and get them corrected. Or at a minimum, be made aware of them so we're fully able to make decisions for ourselves that we feel are ethical and follow the intent of the public.
Any additional questions or comments? All right, well, thank you all for the conversation. I'll make sure I pass some of this information along to some of our RA staff and we'll come back to this group. All right, so next then we're on to business item 2020 we're on to our consent agenda. I've been so long since we've had a consent agenda that I wasn't ready for that. So we have 4 items on consent tonight. So would anyone want to entertain a motion to approve the items on consent?
That's so moved.
Moved by Gonzalez. Is there a second?
Cummings, second.
A second by Cummings. Jenna, can you call the roll, please?
Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zarin.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. Now we're on to our first business item. It's business item 2020-141, which is a joint committee item. It's 2020 Unified Budget Amendment second quarter. We have Ed Petrie here.
Yep. Good afternoon, Chair. This is Ed Petrie. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Chair committee members, I'm Ed Petrie. I'm Director of Finance with Metro Transit. This afternoon, joining me will be Heather Augustin-Heebner. She's Director of Finance and Administration with the Metropolitan Transportation Services. We'll be presenting the second quarter Unified Budget Amendment. I will go through the changes on Metro Transit. I'll discuss the capital and the operating, and I will then turn it over. I'll answer questions and then turn it over to Heather to answer or to present for Metropolitan Transportation Services. The amendment this evening does include both changes on the capital budget and the operating budgets. On the Metro Transit portion of the budget, the first portion of the budget is called Closing Projects and Reallocating Authorizing Funding. We have a handful of about 7 different projects that we are ready to close this evening. The projects are completed and we have a balance of just over $1,193,000 worth of local money that remains in these projects that we are then going to close out and then reinvest that funding back into the projects, the additional projects down below. So we'll be taking that $1,193,000 and reinvesting it into other projects. The meat or the main portion of our amendment this evening is authorizing some new projects. These are projects, all the projects were in the council's authorized CIP that the council adopted in December. The funding, the local funding is now available, so we're bringing those projects forward this evening. The first project is a light rail overhaul and light rail capital projects. This is just basically an administrative adjustment where we're moving. We have $2,130,000 that we're moving from one light rail project into a general project called Light Rail Capital Projects. It falls within the scope of the grant. So we're moving it from a like project to a like project. The other projects were projects that were in the CIP. They include major improvements to support facilities for some boiler systems, boiler replacements, fire sprinklers, and garage doors. We have another major project called Transfer Road Building. This is for some HVAC systems and some roofing work on our Transfer Road facility. We continue to do work on our light rail blue line vehicles, the corrosion mitigation to keep the vehicles in a state of good repair. We're recommending some funding this evening for non-rev vehicles, which includes the support vehicles for all of our building and street maintenance and public facilities. We have some IS capital upgrades. One of the things that I work very closely with Teresa Nissler from the IS department. We look at all the different capital needs for the agency for every year. I actually sit down with Teresa every quarter and go through the needs and bring the funding in as they're beginning to do their replacement cycles. This includes replenishment and replacement of some desktops, laptops, some printers, copiers, servers, and some network equipment. We also have some LRT remodeling of our control center and upgrading of the LRT the O&M wash and sand bay. The amendment this evening would recommend bringing in approximately $10 million worth of local funds. That's about $793,000 worth of MVEST that was adjusted from the closed projects. We're bringing it back in down below into these projects, and then about $9.2 million of regional transit capital. Chair, I want to let you know that I've been working with our grants department. We have applied for all of our calendar year 2020 federal grants. We had anticipated bringing them forward this evening, but because of the CARES Act grants and because of the CARES Act grants taking basically the primary time at the FTA, our regular grants have been slowed down about 3 to 4 weeks. So we anticipate doing another operating capital amendment sometime probably late July. At that time, our capital grants for all of our capital projects, like bus purchases and those items, those federal funds will be available. But this evening, what I'm bringing forward is about $10 million worth of local money for local projects, and I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ed? All right, then we'll move on to Heather. I didn't mean to forget you in the beginning.
Chair committee members, I have just one piece on the operating for Metro Transit.
Okay.
I will move forward with that. Metro Transit has 2 items on our operating budget amendment. The first item is for 2 positions. Metro Transit had originally budgeted 2 positions. They're IS type positions to working on our real-time signs and our passenger interactive technology systems. I was working with Teresa Nisler from IS on this, and it's decided that we had budgeted these positions, got them ready to hire. They're going to be managed by the IS department. So we're transferring the positions and the dollars over to IS. They will then allocate the cost back over to us. So it has no impact on our budget, but these positions, they're IS type people. They will be managed by the IS department. The other item for Metro Transit is also $937,000 worth of IT equipment, critical equipment that's below the capitalization guidelines that we had budgeted in Metro Transit. So these are some items that that now the IS department will purchase on our behalf. So we're going to transfer the dollars over to them. They will purchase it and manage it and allocate the costs back. So this once again has a zero budget impact for Metro Transit. And with that, Chair, committee members, I would stand for questions on the Metro Transit operating budget.
All right. Any questions for Ed? I will just say I think it's great that you're moving the IS positions over to the IS group. That just makes a lot more sense. So that's good to hear, actually.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. Now we'll go on to Heather. And I didn't mean to forget you at the beginning.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Oh, Councilmember Chambliss.
Oh, thank you. So I just had a question about the real-time signs. Those are external signs, is that correct?
Chair, committee members, that is correct. Those are the real-time signs that are on the rail platforms that tell, and also on the street also that tell like when the next bus is arriving or when the next train is arriving.
Okay, and where are the signs for the buses going to be located and how many of them are there?
Chair, committee members, this is for, we're hiring IS people to repair and maintain those signs. So the signs are currently on the street, like down Marquette, et cetera, or on the rail platforms. We're hiring IS people now to monitor them and to maintain them and repair them for us.
Okay, so the ones that are not working right now on Marquette, the IS is going to take care of them instead of a contractor.
That is correct.
Lovely.
Great.
All right. Any other questions? All right, Heather.
All right, good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. So the capital portion of the budget amendment for MTS is fairly simple tonight. We're not bringing in any new funds into the capital program, but we are closing 15 projects and sweeping the remaining funds to be reallocated for future projects. All the projects we are closing have been completed. On the operating side, we're asking to bring $12 million of Federal CARES Act into our pass-through account for regional providers. These funds will be passed through to regional providers via grant agreements, and amounts have been allocated to each provider using an established formula, and you will be asked for authority to execute grant agreements in the next business item. As background, you've heard this, I believe, before, but the council has been awarded $226 million in Federal CARES Act for transit, and the remaining $214 million will be brought into the council budget in future budget amendments. The reason we're bringing it in as parts is essentially we're passing it through to our regional providers, and we did not want to have them wait any longer than absolutely necessary while we continue to work on the council's allocation. So this budget amendment demonstrates commitment towards asset preservation and also supports the Thrive outcome of stewardship by assessing the future needs, responsible planning, and management of resources for Metro Transit and Metropolitan Transportation Services. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions you may have.
Any questions for Heather? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item number 2020-141JT.
Chair, this is a Sterner. I would motion to approve that.
Motion by Sterner, is there a second?
Second by Chambliss.
Second by Chambliss. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Atlas Ingebretson.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zarin.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we're on to business item 2020-162, and we have Heather Geisel.
Hello. Madam Chair and committee members, my name is Heather Giesel and I am the grants manager for MTS and Community Development. MTS is requesting that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute grant agreements to pass through federal CARES Act funds. Agreements will go to the following suburban transit providers. Maple Grove Transit in the amount of $1,213,690, Minnesota Valley Transit Authority in the amount of $6,118,007, Plymouth Metrolink in the amount of $1,188,885, Southwest Transit in the amount of $2,525,126, and the University of Minnesota in the amount of $1,085,532. Funding for these grants is provided as part of the CARES Act. Funding is provided at 100% federal share with no local match required and will be used to support operations and other expenses generally eligible under the Section 5307 program to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. This item is contingent upon adoption of the second quarter 2020 budget amendment, which was presented just prior to this item. I'd be happy to stand for any questions at this time.
Thank you, Heather. Are there any questions from council members? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item number 2020-162.
Cummings moves.
Moved by Cummings. Is there a second?
Sterner, second.
Seconded by Sterner. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Alice Ingebretson.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Hudson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zarin.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. That motion carries. Next, we're on to business item number 2020-142. It's master contracts for structural design, contract 19P262. We have Julie Brenny here, I believe.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and council members. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm presenting business item 2020-142. This is for master contracts for structural engineering services. And this procurement replaces a current group of 2 contracts that will expire on December 31st of 2020. The contracts under this procurement will be used to support work that is identified through a separate contract Metro Transit has for bridge and structures inspection. And this is a 5-year group of contracts that anticipates the work that for once the Southwest LRT is open. So it's a 5-year group of contracts, and we're looking towards the future and what the needs are going to be down the road as well. For this procurement, we worked with the Office of Equal Opportunity and have included a 15% goal. And we're requesting authorization to award 3 contracts, each valued at $700,000 each, for the total of $2.1 million. And we did do a sweep through all of the planned structures as well as existing structures to get to this value and assuming the work that will need to be done. With that, I can answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council members? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2020-142.
It's Fredson, so moved.
Moved by Fredson. Is there a second?
Sterner, second.
Seconded by Sterner. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Alice Ingebretson.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zarin.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. Motion carries. Next,
Thank
we're
you.
on to, Thank you. We're on to business item 2020-157, Southwest Light Rail Transit Green Line Extension and Legal Services Contract in support of project activities. We have Jim Alexander.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. This is Jim Alexander. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
All right. So we have business item number 2020-157. This is to authorize the regional administrator to award, negotiate, and execute a legal services contract with Schiff Hardin to support the Southwest LRT project activities in an amount not to exceed $2.5 million. And the background on this, and forgot to introduce myself, I'm the project director for Southwest LRT. The background on this is the council issued a request for proposals back in March for legal services. We have a little over $1 billion in construction contracts, and we felt it prudent to have some legal services to help us with any change order or possible claims issues that may arise from the project. And so the procurement was put out, and we did receive 3 proposals. Those were evaluated by a panel represented by the council and Hennepin County, and landed on the Schiff Hardin proposal as the most advantageous to the council. And so, Madam Chair, council members, I have for you tonight to consider this this award of the contract of $2.5 million to Schiff Hardin. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions from Councilmember Chambliss?
Hello, I just have a question, Alexan, on the DBE firm that did not submit a proposal. I'm wondering if there is going to be follow-up or if you have a reason why they did not submit. I'm just curious, making sure that we're looking at the reasons why people may not submit a proposal, if there are any obstacles that could be identified as a part of that process.
Sure. Yeah, Madam Chair, Council Member, sure. I might have to follow up with OEO and get back to the committee on specifics on the why they did not propose. I'm sure there was a follow-up, but I do know that this being kind of a specialized area of work, OEO determined that there was no goal assessed for the DBE participation on this contract, but there was a reach out to that DBE firm that they did know that they are in this environment, but they decided not to propose. But I'll need to get with you and have OEO get back to you on that, why they actually didn't submit a proposal.
That would be great. Thank you.
I do see Cy Jordan on the line. Do you have any comment?
Hello, this is Cy Jordan. I don't have any specific information on this particular contract. What our general practice is that if they make a request, I'm sorry, I put myself back on mute. I apologize. So when they do submit a proposal and they are not considered, generally when they reach out to have a conversation, we're more than willing to walk with them through the process and through their actual submission and walk through the panelist considerations. In this case, what we'd be doing is doing an outreach to them and asking them questions about how we could better support them and if they did encounter any barriers. So we can certainly do that on this contract.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
So I get just one clarifying question and a quick question. So it wasn't that they didn't want to apply; they applied and didn't get chosen.
No.
Maybe I could answer that, Madam Chair, Council Member. It's my understanding that OEO did reach out to that firm, but the firm elected not to submit a proposal.
Thanks for clarifying that. And then I just wonder if this is something that we can know when we have a scenario like this, where we have a firm that could participate and either chooses not to or is not selected. If when we get these before us, if we could have that information as a part of what we receive so that we can track on those things, that would be great if that's possible in the future.
So let me just for clarification, it does in our business items say that one firm was contracted and they chose not to submit. Is that What information are you looking for beyond that? Because it says that in the business item.
To the reason why, so that we know we're doing that, what we are learning from that follow-up that is done. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Any additional questions from council members? All right. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve business item number 2020-157.
Cummings moves to approve.
Moved by Cummings. Is there a second?
Second, Gonzalez.
Second by Gonzalez. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Alice Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zarin.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. And the motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we are on to business item 2020-159. And I'm just going to go ahead and say in 160, 161, all three items to do with the gold line. And we have Chris Beckwith here to go through each of them.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So just to preface, the trio of business items that I'm about to present here are related to master funding agreements and or subordinate funding agreements. This is a structure you've seen many times through both the Gold Line as well as the LRT projects as well. So all three of these are related to that. And just a reminder that the Gold Line is funded 45% by the Federal Transit Administration through the Capital Investment Grant Program. And it is 55% non-FTA local sources, primarily from the counties of Ramsey and Washington. There's a handful of other funding sources there as well, but it's primarily the local counties that are funding this. So we are the federal grantee stewards of all those funds, but the Met Council is not contributing directly to capital costs on this project. We are the owner and operator and will be contributing to operating costs. I just wanted to preface with that information. So then I'll lead into business item 2020-159. This is for a master funding agreement between the Met Council and Ramsey County Regional Railroad Authority, also known as RCRA. There are no costs associated with this business item. This is merely to set up the master funding agreement, which would establish the framework for the transfer of funds between the council and RCRA for reimbursement of professional services and construction related to the Gold Line project. So any requirements of the FTA or any Met Council requirements would apply to any procurements under this agreement, any subordinate funding agreements as well, including DBE goals and things like that. So with that, I will stand for any questions on this business item.
All right, any questions from council members on this business item? All right, if not, I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2020-159.
Fredson, so moved.
Moved by Fredson, second by Gonzalez?
Yes.
All right, wasn't sure. All right, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Alice Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings. Cummings.
Aye.
Thank you. Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zarin. Zarin.
Aye.
And Barber.
Aye. And the motion carries. Thank you. We're on to business item 2020-160. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposed action for this business item is that the Met Council would authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute the Metro Gold Line Subordinate Funding Agreement number 1 with Washington County for service center design in the amount not to exceed $4,975,000. This is not related to a procurement we have done yet. We would actually go through a request for proposal process, which would establish a DBE goal. As part of that process, the $4.975 million is actually an estimated cost for the work right now. So background on this, the council did execute a master or authorize the regional administrator to execute a master funding agreement in February of 2019. And this would be the first subordinate funding agreement under that master funding agreement. So the work is for architectural engineering services for a proposed Washington County Western Service Center. This would be located at the planned Woodbury 494 Park and Ride Station, and it is being pursued as a joint development within the Gold Line project, which is allowed through the FTA Capital Investment Grant Program. So the service center actually would house county social services, a workforce center, community corrections, public health and environment, property records. There'll be law enforcement administration, and public and employee parking. The transit services at the site would include driver layover and a break facility, offices for the Metro Transit Police Department, and other potential uses pursuant to a lease between Washington County and Met Council. So with that, I will entertain any questions about the joint development subordinate funding agreement number 1.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Chambliss. You're muted.
I wouldn't say that this is a question, but I am thoroughly pleased with the fact that the service center is including workforce center. I think this is a great example of how we can have our livability, prosperity, and equity goals being met through partnerships and projects.
Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2020-160.
So moved.
Moved by Gonzalez, second by Chambliss.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, you guys were pretty on top. So, all right. With that, Jenna, can you call the roll?
Atlas Ingebretson.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zarin.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. And that motion carries. We're on to the last one. It is business item 2020-161.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This business item is for both a master funding agreement and a subordinate funding agreement number 1 with Minnesota IT Services, also known as MINIT, and it is in the amount of not to exceed $770,000. So the project would be receiving funds the project would be expending funds to MinIT to do its reimbursement for professional services and construction related to the Gold Line project. And it's for the relocation of MinIT-owned fiber duct bank. So as part of our Gold Line work, we will need to relocate this duct bank, which will be funded by the project, again, which is federally and locally funded through the counties. And we do need to pay for this design work. So we will have the owner of that facility do the design work for us. And that covers this business item. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
Okay. Any questions from council members? All right. If not, I entertain a motion to approve business item 2020-161.
Sterner, so moved.
Moved by Sterner.
Second, Fredson.
Second by Fredson. Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Atlas Ingebretson.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zarin.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. And the motion carries. Thank you, Chris. All right, so the next thing we need to do is decide what is on the consent agenda for the next meeting. The budget item 141 and 162 are tied together, so those will have to go non-consent to council. Oh, wait. And then business item 142 can go 142 and 147, or pardon me, 141, 162 can go non-consent. 142, 115, 7 can go consent. But I'm going to look to committee members to see their thoughts about the Gold Line items. Anyone have thoughts?
Chair Barber, can you say that one more time?
All right.
Which ones are going non-consent?
141 and 162. I had the number wrong the first time.
Chair, those required a roll call. But do they not require a roll call then? Can they go on consent if they have a roll call at committee?
Everything's roll call at committee, right?
Yeah, everything's roll call. It's it's the budget ones they have to go non-consent.
If there's a dissenting vote at committee, they have to go on.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right. Right. So
You know,
it's
I would
just
say-
more if we
Right.
want to bring the gold line items to the full council or if we want to pass them through on consent. I'm fine either way.
I'd say put them on consent. We have lots of.
We do.
items, so.
That's why I'm going to ask the question. So if everyone agrees with that, then we'll put the 159, 160, and 161 also on consent.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Now we're on to the information portion of our meeting. And we have the freeway system interchange study with Tony Fisher and Michael Corbett from MnDOT.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Tony Fisher. I'm a highway planner in MTS. Michael Corbett was the co-project manager on this study from MnDOT. It was a joint study between our agencies, but I'll be presenting today just to minimize any technology snafus. So I apologize for my mistake on the date on the front cover slide. I believe that was the initial date that we were targeting with this presentation, but it was delayed because of COVID-19. So next slide, please. So this is a type of study, investment prioritization study. This is, in that way, it is like the MnPass studies we do, like the CMSP, the low cost, high benefit studies that MnDOT has conducted, where we take a bucket of an investment type and look throughout the region for the problems, the applicable problems, and the possibilities, so that we're looking for really those best opportunities throughout the region. When we say system interchanges in this context, we're talking about where two freeways, at least two freeways cross. In the past, these types of projects have been really evaluated independently. Things like 694, 35E, 62 and 35W were large investments that were thoroughly evaluated, but they weren't considered in the broader context of the region and the possibilities throughout the region, the way we're trying to set things up with this study. So the major issues we were focused on, the major drivers of the study are congestion and crashes. And as you can imagine, there are quite a few needs throughout the region that have been identified before the study. Next slide, please. So we really wanted to take that systematic approach with this study and prioritize those opportunities. I say opportunities as opposed to problems. We see problems every day, but we're trying to translate that, really develop solutions, evaluate those solutions, and report out opportunities. Of course, we want to reduce delay and crashes at those at the locations that we're studying. And we want to specifically consider freight and transit usage when we prioritize locations for investment. And when we talk about right-size investments, we're talking about avoiding diminishing returns, points where more investment gets you less benefits. And we want that it also, besides improving the benefits for the region, it allows us to spread those benefits more widely. Next slide, please. So an example of this type of improvement, this is a location of 9435W. This is a design that would remove the northeast loop you can see there in the top right corner and replace it with that directional ramp. This happens to be a project that's being developed by MnDOT right now and was funded through the Court of Commerce program and is undergoing detailed environmental study and pre-design work as we speak, along with engagement with local communities and local businesses. Next slide, please. So the type of engagement that we do with these regional studies is a little bit different than what you do with a detailed on-the-ground study. People are much more interested in things that are funded, much more interested in things that are going to be in their local community. But we did engage, we did invite each of the 7 metro area counties to be part of this study. We did invite a representative from Region 7W, that's the urbanized part of Wright and Sherburne counties, to be part of the study. A few local governments. Of course, the Federal Highway Administration is an important stakeholder in the study. And then the joint sponsors of the study are MnDOT and the Metropolitan Council. We have engaged in, we did outreach at the beginning of the study early on. We're trying to circle back now towards the end of the study. We were in front of this transportation committee in April, I believe, of 2019. We've been in front of the state's capital improvements committee, the council congestion management process advisory committee, the transportation advisory board and its subcommittees, and the Minnesota Freight Advisory Committee. Next slide, please. So the general process of this study was 5 steps. We first, that first column, we defined the universe of possibilities. What is a system interchange? As I described, where at least 2 freeways meet. The broader universe could have included where principal arterials met, but those were seen to be a very different type of problem to be solved. We focused the locations. The second step was about using performance measures, freight and transit usage, to really concentrate on the more important locations, both in terms of usage and in terms of the resulting crashes and congestion. Then in the third step, we considered what was really causing the problems that were identified there. In a number of cases, the problems weren't a result of the interchange design that this study concerned itself with. They were resulting from downstream bottlenecks or mainline capacity that would be addressed in the MnPath studies. There were also a few cases of locations that were being studied elsewhere that were not considered in this study specifically. In the fourth step, we developed solutions, a range of solutions at these locations. We evaluated those solutions in terms of benefits and costs. And we calculated a return period to sort those solutions. So up until this point, this work is really technical work. But in the fifth step, we wanted to layer on a little bit of context and the importance of programmed investments, a lot of times program bridge or pavement preservation projects. So I'll go through each of these steps just a little bit more. Next slide, please. So again, this is where we define the universe of the interchanges that this study was going to concern itself with. Next slide, please. So you can see here the 56 interchange locations. A lot of these are pretty straightforward where 2 freeways meet, but there are cases where highways are being developed towards a freeway vision. Either interchanges are being built or studies have been done that point in that direction. And so we tried to be pretty liberal with the definition of a freeway. If there was planning, if there were projects working towards that goal, we included it in this study. A couple of examples are Highway 13 at 35W, and another example is 101 at 94, where those wouldn't strictly meet a freeway definition, but we wanted to include them to not miss opportunities. Next slide, please. So in the second step, as I mentioned, we focused in on priority locations just to not expend resources spread too thinly. We wanted to narrow that focus. Next slide, please. These are the performance measures that we evaluated at each of the original 56 locations. We measured crashes through a crash cost calculation, congestion through a delay measure, reliability, and then we also counted the number of freight users and the number of transit customers that use those interchanges to prioritize locations and further narrow the list. Next slide, please. So from the 56 starting point, this brought us to 37 system interchanges. And this was a mix of prioritized locations by those measures, but it also included a number of locations where 2 interstate freeways cross, just because of the importance of the interstate system to the state and the federal government. Next slide, please. So in phase 3, we studied those locations to understand the the causes and the context in those locations, specifically beyond those measures. So next slide, please. So again, we definitely wanted to understand if the congestion crashes we were seeing were the result of interchange design or a downstream bottleneck that was queuing into the interchange. We wanted to know if there was an environmental study that was looking specifically at these locations. At a high level planning study, we did not want to get in the way of a more detailed study process. So we put those to the side and left that up to those studies, but keeping in mind how the results of those studies could plug into these results to create a regional vision. Next slide, please. So in phase 4, we developed those solutions. Next slide, please. We did consider a range of solutions. We did not want to preclude the possibility that a large problem could be solved by a small solution. So most locations have a number of solutions. Each was evaluated for costs and benefits. Next slide, please. You can see how we expended different resources depending on the scale of the solution. Solutions on the left, such as the one on the left, are a small amount of pavement widening. There really isn't a vertical, a third dimension to the work. So it's pretty straightforward to estimate the area that needs to be widened and estimate costs. However, in a number of these solutions, there are bridges involved, retaining walls. Once we get into the third dimension, the costs are more variable, and so there was quite a bit more detailed design work done to estimate the quantities and the costs for these types of solutions. Next slide, please. So each one of the narrowed locations from phase 2 and phase 3 did result in a number of potential improvements to those locations. You can see here, most of these locations have a number of different scale dots representing different scale solution costs. The 4 orange squares are locations that are seeing detailed environmental studies, detailed preliminary design studies currently, and were not directly considered in this work, so as not to conflict with that work. But I think the takeaway from this slide is really how these are interchanges that serve the region pretty broadly. Next slide, please. So under regional opportunities, we just wanted to add a little bit of context to that. We wanted to highlight the importance of coordinating these projects with preservation work. That definitely can minimize the costs of the sum of that work, and it can definitely reduce the inconvenience to travelers. We also wanted to highlight the importance of, as I mentioned, making lower cost investments where that was seen as valuable, to avoid that point of diminishing returns and to allow us to address the very large number of problems across the region broadly. So this work is intended to inform project scoping and funding decisions in the future. This work does not directly aim to just make those decisions here, but it adds context. It provides information that can be considered at that time when funding is available. And with that, the next slide, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Again, Michael Corbett at MnDOT was the co-project manager. You have our contact information. In case there are questions I can't answer, I'd be happy to try to circle back with you.
All right. Any questions from council members? They're very quiet, Tony, so you must have covered everything.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And that does actually conclude our business today. So if there are no objections, we will stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.